Hey everybody, it's Steve with Real Progressives. We're going to do an MMT night just for the heck of it, man, because it's been a while since we've just done pure MMT. And for those people who are not familiar with the term MMT, the term MMT stands for Modern Monetary Theory. And modern monetary theory is a description of how federal financing works from 1971 to present. It's really poorly named. It should not be called theory at all. Modern monetary theory has no prescriptions. It doesn't have any policies tied to it. It just simply describes how our federal government finances spending since we left the gold standard when Nixon took us off in 1971. Anyway, so before we get too far into that, I want to thank a couple of our most recent donors, Jill King, Laura Hamilton, Amy Hewson, and Lilia Kogan. Thank you so much. Those gentle ladies donated $25 a month to us, which is hugely needed, and we are grateful for all the help we can get. I'll post the link to our Patreon account when this is done. Please, if you can, help us. We're trying to build something bigger than ourselves here. We also have a huge announcement coming up. I wish I could tell you it right now. I wish I could tell you it right now. It is so big. It started a while back, but Friday night I went ahead and made the phone call and had to wait the whole weekend for some pondering to occur on the other end of that phone. And then today at around, 2 o'clock, I got the answer, and the answer was exactly what I was hoping for. It was a big yes, so you're going to have to wait for that one. That one's coming soon. I'll let you know. Big, huge announcement coming from Real Progressives. All right, back to modern monetary theory. So it's very important that you understand that I used to be a Republican. It's very important that you understand that I used to actually be a Ron Paul guy. So that means that I used to believe in, a lot of really, really bad thinking, starting with believing the United States is still somehow or another on the gold standard. Also, all the creature from Jekyll Isle craziness that perverts so much of our thoughts and discussions. I also used to believe heavily that the U.S. debt was going to drown us and kill us, and it was going to be something horrible we had to pass on to our kids because I didn't understand economics. You could say I was pretty much a dummy. And had an MBA, and I was still a dummy. I was also very, very steeped in what they call monetarism, which was something that Milton Friedman put forward, which believed that you could devalue money by putting more currency into the marketplace. It was founded heavily on quantity of money theory. Basically, the starting point of all that goes back to gold bugism, which is the belief that here's this pie of gold, and every time you print more money, you slice the gold into thinner and thinner slices till your money is devalued. That there's some finite pool of money and it can't grow. And if it grows, it's, devaluing your currency. All of which is a blatant lie in a monetarily sovereign nation with a fiat currency. The term fiat, for those of you who don't understand this, fiat is like by decree. So in other words, you had your kings back in the day that would mint their coins, and those coins would have their face on them, and you would have to pay your taxes in the king's gold. You couldn't pay it in chicken necks, you couldn't pay it in hay or straw, you had to pay it in the king's gold, and that was what maintained the value of the currency. It wasn't that it was gold, it was that it was the king's gold. So in any event, we have a fiat currency now in the United States, and that fiat currency is called the U.S. dollar. And the U.S. dollar is not backed by gold. It's not backed by oil. It's not backed by the petrodollar. It's not backed by the Rothschild's toilet paper. It's not backed by anything other than the full faith and credit of the United States government, which is founded on the fact that we tax in it. Just like the kings of yesteryear did, we're doing the same thing. So as long as we tax in our own currency, our dollar will retain its value. The minute we decide that we're not going to tax in our dollar is the minute that our dollar will no longer retain its value. Now the issue is, How much tax do we need to charge the world to keep the dollar valuable? And how much can we spend before our dollar suddenly becomes inflationary? So modern monetary theory takes a look at that and says, hey, taxes do one thing, spending does something altogether differently. And when you talk about spending, who controls the purse strings of the United States, government? Congress does. It's not the Federal Reserve. It's not anyone else. It's Congress. So when you hear people talking about why the economy's screwed up and you hear them talk about the Federal Reserve, which has interest rates for borrowing set at 0% forever, okay, you know the person is completely and utterly ignorant of all economic value to this discussion. They really probably shouldn't say anything else more beyond, hey, I'll just listen. That's the next thing that a person that believes the Federal Reserve is responsible for our economy being bad. That's just it. Federal Reserve is about private debt. They are about setting the Fed funds rate for banks to have money to lend. So they basically make our private sector borrowing and stuff like that happen. And since our Congress hasn't spent in forever, since we've been really, really straddled and totally screwed by sequestration cuts that happened a few years back, that are still in place today, by the way. Our economy is anemic at best, heavily private debt centric, and we're very nearing a surplus right now in terms of what we tax versus what we spend, which is the precursor to a recession, as we saw when when Bubba handed W a recession. And unfortunately, W tried to save the day by taking us to war. Which is, he didn't put any friggin' wars on the credit card. Anyone that says that is devoid of reasoning, devoid of logic, devoid of any economic value whatsoever. They should never be listened to for any reason about economics. They should only listen. In any event, so what modern monetary theory basically says is this. We are monetarily sovereign. The Federal Reserve is independent within the government. In other words, they answer to Congress. They pay their fees, they pay their expenses, and then they give the rest of the money back to the Treasury. Anything other than that is a lie. Any kind of conspiracies about that stuff is a lie. Now, there's things that the Federal Reserve does that makes us all unhappy. There's choices that they make that are founded in Ivy League logic that are not good for all of us. But those are things that could be easily offset if Congress did their job. But right now, the primary thing that the Federal Reserve does, so we're all on the same page, so there's not any weird, crazy Rothschilds crap, is number one, Federal Reserve is there for price stability. Second thing the Federal Reserve is there to do is to seek full employment. Now, I posted an article earlier today. Most of you chose not to read that article. It's the way it goes with the economic articles, folks. You just kind of skim right by it for whatever reason. I guess you have an allergy to knowledge. But in any event, nobody read the article. And the article was talking about how, we're near full employment. That's a crock of shit, right? Many people checked out of the economy. Many people stopped looking long ago. Many people lost their skills and are no longer able to work at the higher levels that they once did. Many people are working way below their skill level because there aren't jobs at their skill level. And then the others that are actually working, well, they're working. But the fact is that we're steeped in private debt from our school loans, from our houses, and a host of other things. And this quote unquote recovery that Obama has had us on for forever, right, has been the slowest economic recovery like ever. And the fact is we're getting to another tipping point where we're going to hit another recession. Sadly, only 22 people will be hearing that message unless you guys forward this around. But the reality is that we're going to probably hit another recession because of our fetish with cutting spending, our fetish with acting like we're in debt. Horribly dull people think they're going to help me out by sending me the debt clock. or sending me that thing that shows all the debt by the minute. And it's ridiculous because debt denominated in our own currency is not debt at all. We can pay it in keystrokes. It's simply nothing. It's nothing. Literally nothing. People buy treasury bonds. I get these people that have gone to college recently. They took an economics class and they're coming back to me. Well, we fund the government with treasury bonds. No, we don't. Sorry. Next up. Treasury bonds do nothing really for the United States whatsoever. These countries come in, they buy treasuries, they stabilize their own currency, they stabilize their own economy, they keep themselves liquid in the United States government. It's just an investment for them. Basically, it's an account at the Fed, nothing more. We do nothing to fund our government with those at all. When Congress writes a law, we spend, period, full stop. The deficit, back to that for a second. The deficit is an annual total. It's not like a deficit from 1912 or 1842. The deficit is an annual thing. The amount of taxes collected versus the amount of money spent by our government. Thing is that people think we got to reduce the deficit. They just say, out of nowhere, we got to reduce the deficit. And I say, why? Why do we have to reduce the deficit? Do you even know what the deficit is? Do you understand what sectoral balances are? And they don't. But they'll talk very, very loud and very, very proud. And they'll say things that are way beyond their knowledge level. And the reality is that when we have a surplus or we have a deficit, the answer is always it depends whether it's good or bad or not. Because we have to look at our sectors. We have public sector, we have private sector, and then we have rest of world. Rest of world is our trade balance. So we, as a nation that is a net importer, have a $500 billion a year. Get that? $500 billion a year trade deficit. Meaning our dollars leave the country at $500 billion annually. We're not replenishing that money because our spending is cut. So what's happening to the amount of money in our economy? That's right, it's shrinking. The only way to get that money back in is to borrow. Either the federal government borrows, and when we say borrow, we don't mean borrow like the private sector. When you and I borrow, we got to pay it back. When the federal government borrows, oh no, they got to pay the Federal Reserve back. Well, it's not like that. We are the currency issuer. When we pay interest, that's putting money back into our economy. So the issue here is that people confuse household debt with public debt. Anyway, back at the ranch, when we talk about the deficit, because we are a net importer and because we have huge private debt, the only place that we can expand our economies to accommodate our work, to accommodate our purchases, to accommodate keeping us afloat, is for our federal government to spend more money back into the economy. We're tapped. We are out of disposable income. So by trying to put it on the backs of the Federal Reserve, which gets us deeper in debt through lending, which would be stupid, we instead should be spending like crazy from the feds. Our federal government should be spending like insane amounts of money right now. We couldn't touch inflation if we wanted to. They've been trying. They cannot. We are desperate for an infusion of cash. Now, instead of a stimulus to me is, oops, we screwed up. Now we got to put a bunch of money into the economy. That's what a stimulus is to me. Smart governance says we have a balanced economy, which means when the money's drying up, when we have a trade imbalance, instead of acting like, oh no, we got to bring the jobs back, we need to have the government spend money back into the economy, and then we can go ahead and get jobs repairing bridges, We can get jobs in the medical field. We can get jobs in research and development. We could create a federal job guarantee. Okay? We could do a number of things. There's no reason that we have to bring back twisting wrappers on Hershey's Kisses so we can have jobs in this country. That's foolhardy. It doesn't need to be that way. We can let them trade their goods and services for our paper. Sounds like a great deal to me. I don't need us to be manufacturing Hershey Kisses wrappers in the United States. I would rather us be making bridges. Seriously. I'd rather us repairing old schools. I would rather us doing any number of things with our energy grid. But instead, you all, you, every one of you that don't understand what I'm saying, will typically tell your government when you vote that the debt and the deficit have to be reduced and that we have to cut spending. And so every environmental issue that you want to take on can't be done because you've cut off the spigot that would allow you to have money to fix the environment, to save us from catastrophe. But you, in all your wisdom of your household finances, have decided that the place that can print the money should stop printing the money because you're afraid that it'll run out of it? I don't know. That's what you're doing. That's what you're saying. And my favorite one is, well, we got to borrow US dollars from China. Right. That's not the way it works either. The US government doesn't have to borrow money from any other nation. We don't borrow US dollars from anywhere. The stuff you're hearing about goes back again to nations buying US treasuries. We don't fund our government that way. We simply write a bill, we authorize them to spend the money, and they spend it. Every dollar the federal government spends is a new dollar. You've never seen a dollar before, just so you know. That piece of paper, it's like a coupon. It's a token. It's a tax credit. It's nothing more. There are many, many, many trillions of electronic dollars that have never been printed. Ever. Electronic money. Never, ever see. Those dollars, they get recycled and they get burned. When you pay your taxes, what do you think happens to your tax dollar? Do you think it funds Israel? Do you think it funds our military-industrial complex? Do you think that it funds Social Security? Do you think it funds Medicare? Do you think it funds anything? Taxpayers literally fund nothing at the federal level. Our taxes merely drive currency. It's a brake and a lever. So when we cut taxes, it doesn't rob us. We don't put stuff on the government credit card. It doesn't work that way. So the Republicans occasionally get something right. They don't know why they're getting it right because they're bozos that think we got to cut spending because they stupidly believe that taxes fund spending too. But Democrats have and Greens, quite frankly, sadly Greens do too. That's maybe the most shameful part of it. That even people that should know better don't know better. Progressives, many progressives are still acting like they're LOL libertarians. Stuck in gold standard logic, throwing the creature of Jekyll Isle. One of these days I'll bring my version of the creature of Jekyll Isle out of the basement and show you guys so you know that I meant this crap. I used to believe this nonsense. I used to care about this crap. No, there's nothing federal about the Federal Reserve. Nothing federal about it. You know, anyway. Make your Congress do better, and the Federal Reserve's 0% interest won't bother you so bad. Anyway, so as we go forward and you think to yourself, how can I make change happen? How can I make any of this change happen? Hillary's going to come out and Hillary's going to brag about her husband's economic record, how he ran a surplus. And you, who don't understand economics, will think to yourself, well, shit, we ran a surplus at Christmas this time. Johnny wasn't good and we saved some money. So we went on vacation this summer. It's good to have a surplus. I need some surplus cash. It's different at the federal level. They delete, keyword, folks, they delete your taxes. They're gone. Money comes in through the spigot. The drain is your taxes. That's how they keep money cycling. It's not paying for anything. So you guys have been fighting with the Republicans forever, demanding we raise taxes to pay for stuff. And the GOP has been doing the same thing. I was at a Trump rally on Saturday. Some of you guys may have seen that. And, I listened to him and I gave some chuckles and some play-by-play. But afterwards, there was a lady there. And I told her, I said, hey, progressives can't stand Hillary either. But let me tell you something. And I went into the story about modern monetary theory. I didn't go too deep because I didn't think I was going to get much, reception from them. Heck, I can't even get a good reception from many progressives who want to think like Trumpers. I can't help it. I don't know what your problem is. You just hate progress. You say you love it, but then you do everything under the sun to block it. Moronic economics. You're stuck with it. You love it. You love it. It's like that bad girlfriend you can't get rid of. You just want to sleep with that bad economic theory constantly. You get in a fight and you want it back. You won't let go. It's time to let go of this bad thinking, man. It's time. Time. So anyway, bottom line here is that every one of your plans that you thought you loved from Bernie Sanders, right? All that stuff can't happen if you subscribe to Hillary Clinton's logic. If you subscribe to Bill Clinton's logic of surpluses. Again, his surplus gave W a recession. But what did they tell you? And what have you been repeating for the last 100 years? What have you been doing? Tell the truth. W crashed the economy with the tax cuts, right? Seriously, how many of you worthlessly said that W crashed the economy with tax cuts? Raise your hand. It's okay. I did too back in the day. Seriously, I did too. And I have an MBA, and I said the same worthless stuff. So let's just raise our hands, admit it, and never say it again. Reducing the deficit is killing our nation because we're a net importer. Balanced budgets are the second coming of the Antichrist. It's evil. It's horrible. Balanced budgets are the worst thing you could ever do to a sovereign economy. So Bill Clinton and his balanced budget was what killed our economy. That and his repeal of Glass-Steagall. How do I say this? It was bad news, but it was really ceremonial. Most of Glass-Steagall had already been gutted. But he took away the last vestiges of responsibility that the banks had. He and Sandy Weal celebrated together. He gave Sandy Weal the pen he signed the bill with. And ultimately, you guys have been running around for years bragging about that silly surplus. Occupy Democrats, they need to go out of business and never speak again. Everything that Occupy Democrats says is wrong. They've been telling you this stuff, and you guys have been hyping how Obama has reduced the deficit and how Bill Clinton was so good with the economy and stuff. Bill Clinton had the internet. Anytime you have a disruptive technology, you can hide a lot of ills. But then what happened? The dot-com bubble burst, didn't it? Do you think that burst because of unfunded wars? Do you think it crashed it because of tax cuts? Scotty, don't. No. Wrong. All of it wrong. And see, this is where you've got to be a progressive, a real frickin' progressive. So you tell the truth. Because you can't fix a problem by lying. You can't fix a problem by lying. And that's what the Democrats have done. And that's what every single person that says that the Bush tax cuts killed the economy. You told a lie. And if you say it again, now that you've been told, well, now you're just an outright liar. Now you're not misinformed. Now you're a liar. If you ever talk about the government credit card again, now you know you're a liar. You've been told now. Now you know. If you ever talk about debt being passed on to your grandkids, well, now you know the truth. And if you say it again, now you know you're a liar. If you say our hard-earned tax dollars are going to Israel, well, you know that's not true. Our government just spends the money. They write the bill and they spend the money. It's printed. Every dollar is a new dollar. If you say your hard-earned tax dollars go to Israel, well, you're a liar. The issue is that we don't want our national resources going to fund an apartheid state. It's not that your hard tax dollars went to Israel. And this is the same message I would give Republicans who claim that they're paying for lazy people, this, that, and the other. You all have been fed an entire lie. And it's time to do better so we can fix this nation. You can't cut your way to prosperity. You can't tax your way to prosperity. Now, let's talk about the states. The federal government is the currency issuer. Currency issuer, monetarily sovereign. We're not on the gold standard. We can't trade our dollars for gold anymore. You can buy gold, but you can't convert it to gold. We're not on the gold standard. You can buy gasoline in your car, but we're not on a petrodollar. Anyone that says it, they're a liar. They're uninformed. But if they heard this, they're a liar. So there is no debt you're passing on to your grandkids. It's a simple keystroke. To say that you are, to say that, you're now lying. You've been told. And we'll give you links to prove all this stuff if you require it. I hope you actually read them, though. That's part of the problem. I've had to do this so many times because many, many people will not read the links. So I end up having to start from square one over and over again, which I don't mind doing, but it does prevent us getting into some of the more juicy subjects that we could once you understand basics. So in any event, the states are currency users. So the states must tax, or they must get revenue from the federal government. So federal government, monetarily sovereign, currency issuer. States, not monetarily sovereign, not currency issuers. Let's talk about who are non-sovereign entities. Greece is a non-sovereign entity. Greece gave up their monetary sovereignty, left the drachma, went to the euro. They now are slave to the ECB and are debt whores. They're screwed. They are permanently screwed until they decide to take back their monetary sovereignty. Canada is monetarily sovereign. Detroit is not. China is monetarily sovereign. Puerto Rico is not. Australia is monetarily sovereign. Harrisburg, Pennsylvania is not. So each of these places that are not monetarily sovereign, you have to look at their economy. Are they net importers or are they net exporters? Well, Puerto Rico doesn't make a whole lot. Puerto Rico has to import. So the money is leaving their state. Detroit doesn't make shit anymore. So the money is leaving their state. They're in destitute. They're in horrible shape. And our federal government could easily spend money as the sovereign to prop them up without any problem at all, knowing that they're always going to be in problem because they are net importers without a monetarily sovereign entity to put money back in. So they'll always have to borrow. They'll always have to do some investment that is risky. They'll always have to behave like you and I do at a much larger scale to survive. What if we made a rule that said no more unfunded mandates? That the federal government provided block grants per capita to every state, and they put 14th Amendment rules and parameters around that. You must. The states would no longer be competing with each other for companies based on taxes, based on who can race to the bottom slashing taxes. The states then would be fully funded, and people would not be left high and dry as businesses left their state. Think about it. You're killing the country with bad economic understanding and voting for people that give you bad economic understanding. Now, I can do this all day, every day, 7 days a week. And the story won't change. I might say it slightly differently because I never script this stuff. But the fact of the matter is that this is just butter. It's easy. Once you understand the logic behind it, once you understand basic economics, the root of all economics, everywhere, wherever you go, who's the sovereign? You got to ask who the sovereign is. In this case, people misconstrue the Federal Reserve as the sovereign when reality is the United States government is the sovereign, and we've commissioned the Federal Reserve, who is independent within the government, who is accountable to Congress. But the Ron Paul bots of the world, who are gold bugs, who would deflate our economy to the point where there would be a screeching halt and we would literally come crashing down, have convinced so many people to do very, very stupid things. Now, if you want to have a personal investment in gold, knock yourself out. You want to invest in silver, knock yourself out. Whatever. But that's not the same as being monetarily sovereign. We cannot crash. It's not going to be like that. Now, you have externalities, right? Well, guess what? First of all, the dollar is ubiquitous around the world. Even if the BRICS set up new banks and have another reserve currency, there's a ton of reserve currencies out there, by the way. The US dollar is not the only reserve currency. There are literally tons of reserve currencies in the world. And anytime at all, and I mean this is my guarantee to you, anytime you feel your dollars are worthless, you just give them to me. I'll take every one of them. Don't worry about it. You give me them worthless dollars if you don't believe in it. I'll take them all off your hands. But you know they're not worthless. The only thing that's worthless are the gold bugs who peddle that lie. Yeah, there was somebody who actually asked me to provide credible proof that the U.S. was no longer on the gold standard. I was like, Google is your friend. But I immediately gave him a link. But, I mean, come on. Is there anybody who really believes the U.S. is still on the gold standard? Is there anybody who really believes that the U.S. dollar is tied to the petrodollar? If you do, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're verifiably wrong. There are monetarists out there, people who love Milton Friedman, people who love Ron Paul, who just want to destroy this nation, who have no idea what they're talking about. It's just the way it is. But we could solve all the problems at the state level, at the federal level, at the personal level, if we understood basic monetary sovereignty and we understood MMT, which is not a theory at all. It's simply a description of federal financing once Nixon took us out of the Bretton Woods Accord in 1971. Google it, look it up. Go to New Economic Perspectives. Go to Roger Malcolm Mitchell's Myth Fighter. Go to Bill Mitchell's Billy Blog. You can go to a ton of people But don't go to someone who subscribes to a theory that's tied to the gold standard, because it's not in effect anymore. We are not on the gold standard. So why in the world would you peddle gold standard logic? Think about it. I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to save you from yourself. The logic is there. It's up to you. It's up to you to hold your elected officials accountable, to teach your neighbors, to teach your friends, to stay committed, to read yourself, to learn, to ingest it, to become a walking, talking MMT evangelist, to understand what it is that's going on right now so they can't continue to lie to you anymore. If they continue to lie to you and you continue to buy it, then when Hillary Clinton tries to cut Social Security, or when they try to privatize Social Security because they lie to you and say the Social Security Trust Fund or lockbox, okay, is just ridiculous. Because every single dollar, there's no piggy bank with crumpled up old dollar bills for Social Security. That's not how this works. Every dollar's a new dollar. If they wanted to expand it, if they wanted to give a basic income guarantee, if they wanted to create a federal job guarantee that set the new minimum, you wouldn't even need a minimum wage. You could set benefits. You could set it all. But you guys still believe really, really bad logic. So it's up to you to make a decision. Have you made your decision? Have you made your decision? It's time to come to the God of money and understand, really, really understand how economics is going to save us from ourselves. It is the root of every one of your problems. It's the root of all evil. The love of money is, but it's also the understanding of economics is the root of all fixes, because every single one of our problems devolve to a money motive, to an economic motive. If you want to fix it, then you need to learn it. If you keep parroting bad stuff, well, you really are going to screw your kids and hand down something you didn't want. Do you love your kids? Then it's time you learn some basic economics, monetary sovereignty, and modern monetary theory. Stephanie Kelton, Bernie Sanders' chief economist and economic advisor throughout the campaign that brought up his $33 trillion spending package. I'm talking her lingo here, folks. You like Bernie so much, you like Jill Stein so much, but yet you can't defend their economic policies because you still think you're going to tax your way to friggin' the promised land. And you're wrong. Anyway, with that, I'm Steve Grumbine. I hope you guys learned something tonight. Please join us again sometime. Please donate to the page. Help us grow. Again, we've got a huge announcement coming up, and I can't wait to tell you. I'm not going to tell you yet, though. The time is not right. There will be no wine before it's time. Anyway, have a great night, everybody.